Good morning. So, Greek myth. Time for a coffee, and I thought I could do a bit on Greek myth. In particular, the issues sometimes where you have lots of different accounts, which make things a bit confusing. And I've thought of one way that will hopefully make this make a bit more sense. So here's the thing. You have a myth, or rather you have a character. And across several myths, they appear different. And sometimes that could be quite difficult to align. And in fact, very often when I'm on forums or social media, people are saying, I don't understand this mythical character here. It says they're da-da-da-da, but over here they're da-da-da. And how could they have been... And I think that this comes very much from a modern perspective we have of narratives. That is to say, they are seamless. Everything makes sense. Everything lines up neatly. So, for example, people have very, very, very firm backstories. And if you want evidence of that, try making anything to do with Star Trek, Star Wars, or Marvel superheroes or anything, and getting something wrong. You know full well the internet will wail and gnash its teeth because you've said that a particular character was affiliated here or had this power or did something, yeah? That always caused problems, and I think that's fair enough. I don't have an issue with that. But the ancient Greeks didn't really have that as a premise. So they weren't operating from the idea that we have a centralized narrative where one character has all of the same qualities, has all of the same backstories, and it aligns perfectly. And I thought, perhaps there's a better way of making this make sense. So stick with me on this. Imagine, well, think of your favourite sitcom. It can be any sitcom. Now imagine if it was made in a very different country. How it would change. How that particular country and the culture there might warp and change the characters within it. Perhaps, for example, the wacky character is wacky in a different way. Perhaps, as is often the case, you have a character representing a minority or particular demographic. That might be a different minority or a different demographic. The point being is the culture of that country, the expectations, the social mores and everything else will warp and adapt the characters in that sitcom to fit it differently. It won't be exactly the same as the sitcom that you watch in your country. And Greek myth is a bit like that. So sometimes you'll find a particular mythological character appear in one myth and a different myth, and they don't exactly seem the same. An example here I thought of whilst making this coffee. Han Solo. So I'm old school, so I'm going to do Star Wars, and I'm going to do it from the perspective of someone who just watched the first 3 films ever made, okay? I don't know, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, okay. Imagine Han Solo in Greek myth. Han Solo in Greek myth across those 3 films, he would have a central sort of set of definitives about him, yeah, a certainty. So he would be a captain of a starship, and he would be perhaps a smuggler. But you might find that in the first film, in A New Hope, for example, he doesn't have any sidekicks. He doesn't have a Wookiee sidekick. But in the second one, he does, but it's not a Wookiee. In the third one, he has a Wookiee sidekick, okay? No disrespect there for Chewbacca. And you might find other things. So perhaps you find out in Return of the Jedi that it's actually Han Solo who's Leia's brother. Awkward, but then that film is a bit awkward like that. Anyway, the point being is you would have a central set of core values that would remain the same, but a lot of fluctuating ones that would pop in and pop out. It wouldn't align perfectly. I think that is one of the problems that we have when we try and make that expectation of Greek myth. We retrospectively apply that rationale that everything's going to line up neatly, that you're going to have that one character who's going to have exactly the same set of qualities, backstories, and everything about him or her in every myth. That's often not the case because, as we know from Greek myth, there's often many, many variations of a single Greek myth. Often, even if we have one, there were probably several that were going on back then that we don't have. Okay, so these things were really mixed up. It wasn't that important for the ancient Greeks, or it doesn't seem to be. The important thing was a story that a culture, and again, remember that ancient Greek culture was very different in very different parts of the world. They would have assimilated that particular myth and taken a particular character from that myth, and they would amend it and align it slightly differently to their values. Probably more in line with local heroes, local cults, that kind of a thing. Anyway, going to get back to my coffee. I hope that made sense. So give it a go. Think of your favourite sitcom and think how different it would be with some of the characters, what they might look like, sound like, where their quirks and differences might occur if they were in a different character. Sorry, a different country. And also the whole Han Solo thing. I hope I've not annoyed any Star Wars fans, but I'm sure I'll find out if I have. Anyway, take care.